I remember back in that November day of 1979, the very first Open Mind show that I did. It was a new journey for me that night, and we want to pick up that journey. We talked about it a lot. It was the fascinating experience of a gentleman by the name of Billy Meier, one-armed farmer that lived in Switzerland, that back in 1975, 76, just for some reason or another happened to have an ongoing series of contacts with beautiful ladies who came in spacecraft and talked to him. They identified themselves as being from the Pleiades star cluster, a planet up there called Era. Well, the story was imaginative, but what was interesting about the story, and grew more and more interesting, was that it was supported by hundreds of photographs and also some movie footage, rock and mineral samples, alloy samples. Marcel Vogel, who was here on the show, Dr. Marcel Vogel, then with IBM, said he had never seen metal samples like that. He had never seen an alloy like that. He had never seen one that could be milled like that. He had a chance to sample those. So there were a lot of things about the Billy Meier story. They led us to believe that there was something very true about it. Tonight, we have with us one of the chief investigators on that case as it transpired, started some time ago, and I'm very delighted to have him with us tonight, speaking to us from Arizona, Mr. Lee Elders. Lee, welcome back to Open Mind.
Hi, Bill. How are you?
Well, I'm just doing fine, and I'm looking forward to what we have going tonight, because I think tonight, Lee, we'll have one of the first opportunities to, as our good friend Paul Harvey would say, get the rest of the story.
Well, let's hope so.
A lot of things have happened with the Billy Meier case. When it first started getting national attention, it was exciting to a lot of people. And then a lot of people decided that this really wasn't true, that the photographs were all rigged, the sounds were wrong. And what went wrong? What happened? Why was that?
Well, that's a very complex question. Let me try to answer it this way. In 1978, when we first got involved, we had a lot of pioneering to do. And one of the first things we wanted to do with this case is keep it out of the politically charged atmosphere of ufology. And I think in doing this, I think we created a lot of enemies, and I think a lot of disinformation came down about the case.
Well, a lot of enemies in that you didn't share a lot of information with them as the chief examiners over there, or the people getting into it. That seems to be a lot of the input I had.
Well, that's absolutely correct, Bill. Although we did make overtures to one very large UFO organization. We asked them if they wanted to get involved with us. We asked their director. At that time, the answer was no. The reasons given, the long distance over there, we don't have the funds to do it. We don't have the manpower to do it. If you want to pay our expenses, take us with you, we'll be glad to go. At that point in time, we felt, well, let's pass on this one, let's go see what we can find out. This is what we did. Later on, when we came back, we started bringing evidence, hard evidence back with us. All of a sudden, they wanted to get involved. They wanted us to turn information over to them. Certain photographs, certain negatives, metal samples, things of this nature. Obviously, we refused.
Now, Lee, I know you're stuck up there in the woods in northern Arizona. Wonder if you could talk a little closer into the telephone there or something.
Let me try changing phones here. That might help.
Okay. We're speaking to Lee Elders, who, along with Lieutenant Colonel retired Wendell Stevens, were the chief investigators of this very fascinating case of Billy Meier. A case now in which there are a number of eyewitnesses. There have been some incredible things that have happened over there.
Bill, is this any better?
That's 100% better.
Okay.
You get an A on that one.
All right. So much for the headset.
Okay.
Now, where were we?
All right. So you were talking with one of the large UFO organizations, as my memory recalls. That was APRO. That they wanted to get involved after you'd started doing the spade work.
Yes.
And then what happened?
Well, you know, going back to that beginning, let's go back in a proper manner here. First of all, Wendell Stevens, retired Air Force Colonel, been chasing UFOs for some 30 years. He approached us in 1977 and asked us to get involved with this case in Europe. Approaching us, meaning approaching Intercep, a security firm that I own. I asked him why did he want us involved. He said, well, I want professional investigators. We were honored at the time, but we were not interested. At that time, we were dealing with a lot of multinational clients. And our feeling was, you know, the field was so stigma-ridden that we really didn't want to get involved. Wendell was persistent. He went over, he came back. I noticed a big change in him. And at that point, we decided to throw our hat in the ring because he had brought back a lot of hard evidence. And this excited us. So then we jumped in. We got involved. Our first trip was April 1978. My wife Britt and I, Wendell went over, spent 5 days there. I was impressed by Meier, but I still wasn't convinced. I felt that maybe the guy is hoaxing it, but how is he hoaxing it? So at that point in time began about a 2-year search, my own search, to try to determine if this guy was real or not. In the meantime, the UFO groups were really on our case real bad. They were claiming we didn't have any evidence. First they were claiming we were withholding evidence. Then they started claiming we didn't have any evidence. Then later on, claims were made that we'd stolen some of the evidence, meaning from Marcel Vogel. Talking about metal specimens now.
Mm-hmm.
So it got deeper and deeper. Finally, got to the stage they were no longer interested in looking at any evidence. They became very interested in character assassination. At that stage, we pulled our horns in, Bill. We said none of this. We sat on the evidence, and we took our lumps for several years.
You know, I have a question that just comes to mind here, Lee. Something I want you to mull over as we take just a little break here. Here is a man who claims to be having one of the most, should be one of the most fascinating experiences the whole world should be deeply interested in. He's talking to astronauts from a very distant place. They are telling him many things about our beginnings, about our history, what's wrong in our society, how we can solve it. Have made offers to do a lot of things for us. And who is it that goes and investigates this? The governments? The Air Force? No, it's UFO groups. Why is that? If this is so, and he had that kind of information behind him, where was Uncle Sam? Where were people who could really, totally get involved and do a first-class job instead of, not that you didn't, but other than flying saucer groups who happen to have an interest in that. I'm Bill Jenkins, talking to Lee Elders tonight. We're talking about the UFO in general, but certainly the UFOs from Pleiades in particular. Is it that the investigation of something which had all of the earmarks of being vitally important to the world was left to just private individuals instead of getting the kind of attention you would think that it should have?
Well, in the beginning, you know, this bothered me as much as anything because, you know, Intercept had a track record. We had worked with various government agencies in the past. We knew their modus operandi in certain areas, but we couldn't really see anything on the surface here that indicated that they were involved, that they were interested in this case. But today, 5 years later, we're finding out a lot of things. We're finding out that there was a lot of behind-the-scenes activity going on.
On the part of government?
We think so, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Especially in the metal areas, especially in other areas, especially the hard evidence.
The hard evidence. Photographs, movies, rock and mineral samples, even samples of hair. Of course, the hair was like anybody else's hair, so you can't really say that that was much evidence there. What's happened to all of that evidence?
That's a good question. One of the major problems let's go back to the beginning again. Right before Intercept got involved, I told Wendell, I said, look, if we're going to get involved, we definitely want to control whatever evidence comes. We want to make sure that it is protected. We want security around this man. We want to protect him because at that period of time, he'd already had some attempts against his